refresh this, and it should be working again.
Good old Canadian lowlander.
Oh, it's just such a friendly people.
That's it. They're just a friendly sort of person out there. It's not like I married one of them.
Yeah, it's true.
That's it. Can you
picked
guys hear us
well.
all good?
Yeah, that fixed it.
Yeah,
Yay!
Vanquisher set confirmed.
Cool,
We're all
cool.
good there, looks like.
Perfect, love it. It's not echoey. We don't have any crazy tinny noises like last time. That'd be a real tragedy,
man.
wouldn't it?
That'd be a great start to it again, wouldn't it? First-
Alrighty, let's
Right, yes.
all right, mate. Let's start again. Let's go from the start if you guys can.
Yeah,
hear it so good.
I know the questions we asked just before, we'll ask again. So the first one was sort of, it's been a little bit since our last Q&A and our last video update. Just a quick top to bottom rundown of everything that's happened since then. Bit of a large question to throw at you straight away, but
Yeah,
just
sure.
sort of like a general overview.
That's all good. It's all good. So I guess the first thing everyone wants to know about is the book. So the book is in a great position right now. It's completely done. We're just doing the final proofreads to make sure when it ships out to you guys, we don't have any silly mistakes in there that we go, oh, damn, why didn't I say that? So right now we've got professional proofreaders going through it. We've also got some community proofreaders. You guys know who you are. Thank you very much for your work. And yeah, it's very nearly done. You guys we're still on track for you guys to have PDFs in the middle of April. As for the hardcover book, we haven't been told of any delays other than maybe like a day or two regarding the world and its current state for the physical copies. So maybe we're being sweet talked, but I like to believe that there are no delays on that front, or otherwise I'd like to think we would have been told. So yeah.
The proofreading's
outside of
vital
that,
because we're
Yeah, proofreading is
Australian.
really
we
vital.
don't speak proper English, really. So.
No, we speak out down under backwards English. That's it. As far as the other products as well, we've got the banners are all done, the GM screen's all done. We've got samples as well. It's looking good. It's looking really good. The map as well is completed. It's
map
made
looks
from
amazing.
polyester fabric. It is so good. The map looks unreal. It is really handy as a GM to just be able to throw that down and be like, hey guys, where do you want to go? It's something that, Matt, you said before, we over-delivered on this, and yeah, I really think we have. It's one of those things that maybe we could have gotten away with doing a bit less, but you guys really got behind us, and we want to get behind you guys. So
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, I think you'll be. Yeah.
The level of that stretch goal, I think it's a really good stretch goal. We've I said before, 59 by 63 centimeters. Again, not sure what size that is in your American system, but it's a decent size. When you put it on the table, it's gonna, everyone's gonna be able to see it nice and clear. So, yeah.
Yeah, it looks really good. Looks really good. Very very happy with how that turned out, and I think you guys will be too. Yeah, so I guess does anyone in the chat have any questions that they want to start sending through, or do you want us to just talk about things?
Just spitball or something like that.
Straight away, we've got Gene come through. Thanks for the first question here, Gene. He says, cool. How are the transformation flaws? Have they been changed at all? I assume, have they been changed since the last playtest version 2.1?
Since playtest 2.1 or since inception? I'm going to guess since 2.1, so we'll go with that. Yeah, we've changed a few of them, not all of them. There's a few that we felt that were pretty on point. Some of them we felt were a bit too harsh. So we've sort of dialed some of them back. We've also made it a bit more, I guess, transparent with GMs that if you're not playing that style of dark fantasy, you can just take out flaws you don't like. That's why they're made very modularly by level. You pick one boon and one flaw. It's pretty easy to take just a flaw out and not play with it. But as far as the flaws that we changed the lycanthrope specifically. It was a good point that certain races don't live very long at that point. It's something that we don't play with a lot of those races in our game because they're not in our world setting, but obviously we want people to be able to port them over to other settings. So yeah, it's something that we looked at and we've changed. It's not related to how long you live anymore. It's related more to the lust for the hunt mechanic. few others that we changed, like we changed the lich a bit. It's more about harvesting souls. Still tied into the sort of like the negatives for if you don't, but there's a way to circumnavigate it. We've also changed the vampire a little so you don't instantly die. We've made it that you get paralyzed, as was requested. It makes sense, I think. Was good feedback. Other than that, we've changed a few around, like the Aberrant horror we've shaked up a bit too as far as the floors. The floors are probably the thing that we've changed the most from 2.1. Did you think of the Seraph? What did you think of for the Seraph floor at third? Let me just put that away. There we go. So for the Seraph floor, we actually thought about, so it's mostly the same. It's less reliant on dice rolls and more reliant on behavior of those yourself and your allies around you. So it still has the opportunity for other people to, I guess, influence your game style, or like your mechanics. But for the most part, it's something that should be able to be pretty easily managed by a quick conversation with your friends. And if you have issues there, you've got bigger problems than that. Maybe you shouldn't be playing with those people.
Maybe they're not friends.
Yeah, maybe they're not friends. So that's it. Yeah, so any other questions? Anyone burning for some insider knowledge on what's happening, or?
Not as of yet. We'll still wait until they come through. I know last time it was a little bit of a slow start while people started to come through. But then all of a sudden we were behind by about half an hour on the question front, so they'll definitely come through.
They'll come through thick and fast later.
I'll add a question though. Again, I was one I asked you just before, Jordan, on the other stream. But do we have anything you want to announce or talk about? We were talking about the schedule a little bit. So is there anything on your plate that you want to talk to the community about?
Yeah, for sure. So we're nearly at the end of this project. So we're at the point now where our time that we can spend engaging with you as a community is about to increase much more. So once that happens, we've got the capacity to do more streams, to do more, we can do YouTube content, we can do all sorts of stuff, whether it's to do with the book itself or just tabletop roleplay in general, or even just board games. It's the sort of thing that we're happy to bring to you guys if you're happy to watch it. And so, yeah, I guess my question to you, if you don't have any questions to put in the chat, would be what sort of stuff would you like to see from us? What would be engaging, and what would you be interested in jumping on and seeing us do?
Hopefully the answers are that they actually do like to see us. Would be
the
great start.
That's it. And hopefully the answers are appropriate. I don't know if your webcam is good enough for anything inappropriate.
Not quite. I'd need to upgrade for sure. Otherwise, you can't get
That's
the full
it.
1080, like the 1080 feeling.
No, you need the 1080p for the real experience.
All right. We've got Shikaku13 coming through with a question saying,
Hey there, Shikaku.
Howdy.
Thoughts on the UA fighting styles, the knife fighter and unarmed fighting?
I am rather behind on the Unearthed Arcana. This project has completely consumed my every waking minute. So
The soul.
I haven't read it. If you want to send a link in chat, I can have a quick look and let you know. But yeah, that's unfortunately my life has been, in a cage, getting squirted with the hose again if I don't write the book.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
That's called effective writing, is what that's called.
That's it. It's motivational techniques.
And
So
straight away as well from Canadian Lowlander, thoughts on the new Druid UA? So
more UA I haven't seen. Hey, Canadian Lowlander, thanks for helping us with the sound as well. And
Yeah, that was a
with the Twitch.
lifesaver
Yeah,
at the
it
start.
was good. I hate to think how long we would have been talking without anyone
Too long.
realizing
It would have been
otherwise.
too long.
That's it. I think the last one I saw was the Wildfire Druid. That was quite a while ago. Is that the one you're referring to, or is there a newer one that I'm not a part to?
So,
One with Guiding Bolt.
Chat here.
Okay, I haven't seen that one. I don't know. I'll have to have a look.
Dust off the old Arcana.
Yeah, let's.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. I'll have to. I know they've done a heap of recent, so it's definitely something I'm looking forward to diving back into. So, yeah, I wish I had the time for that right now, but to be honest, I've got more important things to do.
We'll be able to have a
so.
cute little reading day together. It'll be so much fun.
That's gonna happen. Can be you, me, and Twitch.
That'll be the next stream. Jordan reads Unearthed Arcana.
That's it. I'll just have to get a really low, sort of just even voice.
We'll work on like a Morgan Freeman-y kind of vibe, I reckon.
I don't think I can pull that off. My accent's just gonna destroy that.
Oh my god, imagine an Australian Morgan Freeman.
Oof. It's not gonna sound right. Any other questions coming through? Or?
Yeah, we've got Gene. Sort of more of a sort of general question on the project as a whole, and a second book. Says, oh, what about a second book? This one focuses on grim and dark for the most part. What about a light and holy book? There isn't much. There isn't many things like that, he says.
So, as in, light as in, I guess there's two ways to go with that. Like light as in like light on easy content, so nothing sort of too confronting or too,
I assume it means
like
sort of
away
like
from realism.
morally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So very focused
Like
on
polar
so like
opposite.
divinity. Yeah, that'd be cool, and sort of like tracing through sort of like divine, sort of like heavenly planes.
We could almost make
That
it like a
could be
prequel to the whole Grimhollow thing, right? Once the gods all get wiped out and whatnot afterwards.
Yeah. No spoilers.
No spoilers.
That's it. No, I'd love to do another book, to be honest. That's something that I would really get around. It'll eventually be on the cards. It's just something I guess we have to discuss as a team in the background about what we want to do, and that's we gotta work towards that. I guess there's a lot of work that goes into prepping one of these things as opposed to just, hey, let's do this now, which is it's very tempting. Very tempting to do that. I mean, if we were to do another book, I guess my preference is towards sort of something with subclasses. I would love to create a bunch of subclasses based around Grimhollow. Whether you guys want to see more Grimhollow content or not, I'm not sure. I guess you can let me
Almost
know
go
in
down
chat.
like a player's handbook style sort of.
Yeah,
vibe.
I'd love to do something, I guess, a bit more akin to Xanathar's with, a bunch of that. Maybe a bit less of the GM's content because we've got a lot of it.
Yeah, that is true.
Maybe a bit more player stuff. Maybe throw in another transformation or two, as there's a few that have been niggling at me to sort of come to life, but they didn't really fit. But yeah, that's that would be my preference. I guess I'm only one vote in the company, so we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. What would you guys like to see?
Oh, Gene responded saying that that'd be cool. So
Yeah,
so on
That's
board.
cool.
Seems like.
cool. We've got Gene's vote too, guys.
We'll get a poll going. We'll
I'm
see what this ends up.
I'm slowly building my support. Slowly building my support for my case, and then you guys won't have a choice but to make the content that I want to make. one Twitch stream at a time.
One step, baby steps.
All right. So Shikaku's copy pasted the text that it was sort of referring to there, which Jordan, I think, if you want to just quickly read through in the Twitch chat that and have like first reaction comments on it. Obviously, we haven't given you the time here to sort of analyze this in relation to how that's going to do with Grimhollow. But if you want to do that live, that'd be great.
All right, let's have a look. Thrown weapon fighting. Okay. Oh, that's similar
Live
to our
reactions.
fate. That's similar to our fate. Our fate's a bit better, but I mean, strength-wise, but I guess a feat should be a bit stronger than just a fighting style. That's cool. Unarmed. Alright. That's cool. That's actually really cool. I like unarmed. I like that they put the claws in for if you have two hands free. Sort of that's something that's always irked me about unarmed fighting, is it's very vague as to what you actually do. Like, are you punching someone? Are you kicking someone? I see why they made it vague, but it's because it's so vague, it's the sort of thing like if I'm holding two hand weapons, like, you know, say two short swords, am I still able to kick people? Like, it's the sort of thing that you have to sort of read over the book a few times before you can wrap your head around exactly what, you know, an unarmed attack encompasses. So I feel like it's really cool that they've done this, sort of saying that, you know, if you have your two hands free, that you can, you know, do the sort of upgrade that a bit more. The grapple, I guess you can do. Oh yeah, that's cool too. Like, 'cause that's the other thing as well, especially at lower levels, it feels bad to use an attack to grapple someone and that's all you've really done. Like, even if it's very important to hold someone in place and, you know, get their speed to 0, like it might be, you know, encounter changing, but it still feels bad for the person that has to spend their action every turn doing that. So I guess even like at lower levels, when you only have that one attack, you still feel like you're contributing a bit more. So that's cool. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. Yeah, they're cool. They're cool. So I guess my initial response
quietly.
Is, yeah. That's it. I approve. Whether so Shikaku, who gets these? Is this fighter? You'd hope so. Ranger. I think it'd be a bit weird if like the paladin got unarmed fighting, and even thrown weapon fighting.
If you haven't seen as well, he's commented underneath saying that he's brought this up because he believes the knife throwing style might make the feat we made a little bit redundant.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so I guess it depends if it becomes in the in an official product. I know a lot of people don't like to play Unearthed Arcana until it's properly play tested and edited, but you know, I guess it's the sort of thing that's going to happen as well. Once the book's made, it's going to be physically out there. It's not like we can make quick changes to it. So, you know, I'm sure Wizards will come up with something similar to something else in the book at one point. Might make it a little redundant. Maybe our version is better, maybe their version is better, and one becomes redundant for the other. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen. And, you know, trying to fight that is sort of a losing battle.
Definitely. And it's beyond our control to have some sort of live document we constantly upgrade and update, etc. And yeah,
I don't think Wizards of the Coast would be very happy with me saying that they need to change their thing either.
He's commented through saying he thinks fighter, paladin, and ranger.
Okay. I guess my thoughts on that then are, it's weird for paladin to get unarmed fighter. I mean, I guess you could get some cool builds around that.
Doesn't seem fitting though for a paladin. Seems a little bit out of
place. I mean, yeah, it does. I guess it depends on the sort of paladins you want to build. If you want to really push the boundaries of like traditional character concepts, then yeah, I guess you could create some really interesting things with that. I guess I'm happier for character or like classes to have more options than less options. I'm always in favor of that. But yeah, it does seem a bit out of place for the paladin to get that. But yeah, overall, yeah, that's my thoughts on it, I guess.
Summary.
Heard it here first. All right, we'll move on to Kronos' question.
Yeah.
Is there anything you are willing to say about the Dreadscapes at this point?
Trying not to spoil lore for people until they've got the book and they've had it, or like at least the PDF and had a chance to read about it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut for it because I have a horrible history of spoiling things. So
yeah, so it's the sort of thing that once maybe people have had it in their hands for, you know, maybe a few weeks, had a chance to read it, then yeah, I'm happy to chat about, you know, lore as much as you guys want, but I'm being very mindful that there are those specifically who are sensitive to spoilers, so I don't want to get yelled at, Kronos.
He gets sprayed enough in the cage as it is. Don't make it worse.
That's it. It's hard times in the cage.
Especially if there's a few members in the community that want to hear that sort of content from you, Jordan. That's something we can definitely look to add inside the inside some more streams in the future. You know, you want to talk
Yeah, yeah.
through some
Maybe we could
content in
do
depth.
a
And
maybe we could do a spoiler warning stream.
Yeah, that'd be
Oh, yeah.
something cool.
Yeah, or we could chat in the Discord spoiler section. Or
Yeah, we
I'm
could
sure
do
there's a
something
way
like
to
that.
do it. Yeah, we could do that. I just don't want to upset the all the people who are here to watch, and that's a lot of angry emails. So
Nothing
Yeah,
wakes you up better than a good angry email, though. Get your day going.
it's a rough start. Rough start makes the cage so much harder.
Who are we kidding? You don't get Wi-Fi in the cage. What do you mean?
True. You guys just print them out, make them paper airplanes, and just fling them at me. Alrighty. Any other questions? Or
Yep. Just as you say that, Gene's come through with another question. What will the people be like? Similar to Ravenloft? There's a few questions after this as well, so I can reread if you like, but I'll keep going.
Sure.
I'll start from the top, sorry.
Yep.
What will the people be like? Similar to Ravenloft? Will there be shells of people? Will there be other homebrew inspirations like Blood Hunter orders? Blood Hunters would be very popular.
We did actually touch on a
Yeah.
question about Blood Hunters recently.
Yeah, we
the
have.
Order of Blood Hunters.
So, the interesting thing about Blood Hunters is that they are not part of the SRD. So, for anyone who doesn't know, there's something called the System Reference Document for 5e, and that's all the content that Wizards of the Coast have said, hey, we're happy for you to include this and slight variations of in your content, which you can base it off. So, as the Blood Hunter was made by our Lord and Savior Matthew Mercer, it's not a part of the SRD, and we're not allowed to touch it. It's a very, it's a very gray area where I doubt he would ever, sort of go after anyone for that. But it's not something we want to sort of put anyone in that position.
Just kind of good manners,
needing to-
anyways, and not.
Yeah.
have to do it.
It's a very delicate situation, sort of breaking the SRD or the licensing agreements for making 5th edition content. Something that we'd rather keep on the right side of.
100%.
Continue to make things. Yeah, that's it. Also, Americans like suing, so or at least there's a very big sue culture in the United States, so we will keep away from that.
Well, we could have personal notes that we could accidentally leak.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, I mean, there's nothing stopping me from sharing my opinion, though. I think that the Blood Hunter makes an excellent addition to any home game within Etheros or Atharis. It fits within the world perfectly. It's really, really seamless with how well it goes with dark fantasy, particularly in like the gothic horror sections of our world. It's not to say that there's not a few little mismatches, but for the most part, anyone who's willing to, who likes playing that sort of character, not just the class, but the sort of character you play along with it, will have a really good time doing so in Grimhollow. So I guess that's it. Maybe one day we'll Mr. Mercer and I can come to an agreement about this, but for the meantime, in the immediate future, I'd say that's not going to happen. So
Catch us on Critical Role, and then we'll talk about it.
That's it. If you see me on Critical Role, then maybe it'll happen. But until then, I think it's a far off dream.
Unless anyone in the chat has his number and wants to set up that meeting,
Yeah,
let us know. Send a DM through.
That's it, Mr. Mercer, Matthew, in the chat right now. Just let me know when you want to hook up, and we'll do it.
Shikaku saying, what is the latest playtest, so I can be looking at the right ones, or what are the latest playtests?
Yeah, for sure. So, playtest 1.1 is the latest of the spells, the curses, advanced weapons, all that. So playtest 2.1 is the latest of the transformations. Playtest 3.0 is the latest of the background system. We didn't do a playtest 3.1 because the feedback for the background system was almost entirely positive. There was almost no one had a critique. There was the odd one here or there that was unanimous, and we sort of, I guess, upon releasing that playtest, we even knew people would say that, and we sort of thought that's what we should have done in the first place. It's one of those things where you can be sitting on the fence. It's like flipping a coin to decide an answer to something, and you don't really know what you want it to be until you flip the coin. It was the same with the playtest. We released the playtest, and the moment we'd pressed, I guess, send or put it out there, we're going, damn, yeah, we should have done that. Sort of made up our decision for us, and yeah, all the feedback said that as well. I think that's mostly about the different professions being given a skill that relates to the profession ability. So for example, I think there were a few in criminal where you were given proficiency in like stealth or deception or something, but yet the ability that you had required perception, and people sort of said, hey, if I have an ability that needs that, then I should be given that for free. Like that's the proficiency I should be given, or the skill I should be given. Yeah, we agree.
It is. That's really something that makes sense. It's just those little things that sometimes get overlooked on the way through.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of those things as well that some were very fitting to sort of just say, hey, look, this is a good ability, but it uses this skill typically. And this is really the sort of skill you should be given for this class. There were a few that mismatched, like the soldier, for example. The ability we really liked, it was sort of like battlefield analysis, but it didn't make sense to give a soldier, investigation or something along those lines. It made sense to give them athletics, and so that they were a mismatch, I remember. So we really had to work hard to sort of align those. And so we've done that now, and I think that those who sort of saw that the way we did will be happy about that.
I mean, balance would be a big factor going into that too, with backgrounds and things. Like, hey, just do the soldier example.
Yeah, well, it's a hard thing as well because not all skills are made equal.
Yeah,
I think most,
definitely.
D&D players will know that. I mean, when was the last time you animal handled?
Personally, never.
Yeah, exactly. It's I don't think I've ever seen you roll an animal handling check. Maybe like trying to drive a cart or something. It's just nothing that happens.
It's never drunk driving if the horse is the driver. That's all that needs to be known. So
yeah, but the horse was drunk.
Yeah, okay, that make it worse.
So I guess that's probably your best bet for the different play tests. We're about to release in mid-April. We're going to release the PDF, so that's your best bet if you can hold out till then. If you want to get in early though, if you want to get in early though, those are the PDFs I'd go after, or the play tests I'd go after.
While we're on that topic, I'm going to actually jump ahead over Cronus's question. So apologies for that, Cronus, but we'll get back to you because this Shadow Mage, he's just asked if there's actually a specific date that we're going to be releasing the PDF, or is it no date set as of yet? Or
the date isn't set yet because it's one of those things that we don't want to lock ourselves into a situation where we go back on our word. We know it'll be mid-April. We don't know whether that's going to be, April the 12th or April the 20th. It could be a good week sort of variance in there. I would say that if we get to late April and there's no PDF, then we've hit a snag and there's something that's had to been sorted out.
The pitchforks can get ready.
Yeah, that's it. But at that point, I mean, it's probably for a good reason. The only thing that we're still pending on is our copyright. So that's the only thing I could see putting a snag in the works for the PDF, at least at this point. Everything else is just a matter of rereading over and over.
And I mean,
I'll make sure there's no issues.
With the way the whole global thing going is too, things like getting copyrights and stuff have probably been slightly slowed down, but
yeah, maybe.
So I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Usually it's something that the process gets done in, under an hour. So it's for the most part an automated system for a lot of the sort of copyright agencies around the world. But yeah, we'll see how we go.
Let's see how it goes.
If you've ever been to university, it's like Turnitin. Anti-plagiarism sort of software. Yeah, it's like that.
We'll jump back up to Cronus's question. Not sure if this was covered before, but what sort of magical items, if any, will be featured?
Yeah, so we've got a few in contraband. So we don't have magic items specifically. We have magic items that are illegal, or at least illegal in the civilized parts of Ethos. Either by superstition, people think that they do something they don't, or because they are considered immoral, even by a dark fantasy world standards. So things like shadow steel blades that, they sort of render the soul when they hit someone, through to the arc rifle, which for religious superstition, people believe it shatters your soul when you kill someone with it. Whether it does or doesn't, it's we sort of left that up to interpretation. But yeah, so we've got a few weapons out there that are quite a bit more expensive, very powerful, and the sort of thing that you don't want to be caught in civilization wielding, especially using.
How to become the
others in there.
BBEG of your campaign 101.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so it adds a few layers to a campaign as well. If you want to, sort of smuggle contraband or something, it's a good plot hook, because they go for a lot of money.
All right. Jane.
Anything else?
Yeah, so Aberrant Horror and Otherworldly Tendrils, will the damage die increase later? And does this count as an unarmed strike?
Yes, it does count as an unarmed strike. No, it doesn't. I don't believe it increases, but we may have changed that or changed it back. I remember we looked at that when we were doing the final copy. Can't remember which way we changed it, but it's it definitely counts as an unarmed strike. And so the idea is not so much that it increases with damage, but maybe it increases with damage at, I think at one of the higher levels it does. It becomes like a D6 or a D8. Yeah, I think we've made it that it upgrades your dice, so D6s become D8s for other Aberrant Horror mechanics, and therefore the tendrils go from a D4 to a D6. So if you want to go up to level 3, or up to level 3, taking all the different additional tendrils, and instead of taking a 4th, take another 3rd level boon, which would be the one that upgrades your dice, then effectively you can make 3 unarmed attacks at D6. So if you combine that with Hex, and that's going to be a lot of damage on your turn. Heaps of damage. But then at that point you're level 17, so I mean you're still probably doing no less damage than the wizard or someone.
I'm personally excited for you to have some videos and content out there talking about some of these ideas, Jordan. It's cool.
Yeah, there's some crazy character concepts you can come up with, like especially around like monks and warlocks, and even the ranger seems to benefit from the Aberrant Horror a bit.
I'm very confident there are some crazy ideas you could come up with.
I think the community is going to come up with some crazier ideas, so I'm really interested to see what you guys come up with and how you can horribly break what we've made.
Like Cronus just saying, just be a barbarian horror. That way you can add rage damage.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. We're getting there. That'd be a cool concept as well. Barbarian horror. Yeah, you don't want to get trapped in a wall of force with that.
Yeah, no, thank you. James actually added to the end of that question, just saying, and how are magic items? A little confused by the phrasing of that.
Yeah, I'll jump in chat and I'll have a look. What have we got?
Tokyo Ghoul style.
And how are magic items? As in, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean, Jane.
All good. We'll move to the next question, which is Kronos saying, what would you describe the dwarves of your world like? The article on your website suggests you're basing them off Tolkien and D&D. Are there any other sorts of dwarves that inspired you?
Not particularly. For the most part, we wanted to keep the tropes very online, or the themes very online for the race, to make sure that people would find them familiar. There's a few others that we've gone a little bit off of the status quo, but for the most part, most races are pretty what you would expect them to be, because in a world of, we've got a lot of conflict, heaps of conflict, designed to be resolved, but at least, a lot of conflict in the world. There's a lot of sort of, I guess you could say, tropes that we've broken, more than broken, we've taken a sledgehammer to, particularly in fantasy. This is something that we wanted to keep the world grounded, so people still feel a sense of familiarity. We didn't want, sort of dwarves that, live in the forest and, they, just they don't resemble dwarves in any sort of
They're like
modern
wood crafting
fantasy.
instead of stone crafting. They
Yeah,
flex
that's it.
together,
They
nice little weave tree huts.
That's it. They got their baskets and they ride around on, like elementals, and they're all druids, and yeah, we didn't want to shatter people's like, because I feel like that's a big basing for a fantasy world, sort of like the fantastical races within. And the best way to sort of make sure people at least felt a little at home in our world was to keep that for the most part the same, and then change the world around those people, make it more of like a sociological sort of environment as opposed to a psychological environment. If that makes sense.
He's added to that saying, no Warhammer dwarves then?
No, not really. Not really. I've played a bit of Total War, but for the most part, I don't think that really. I don't know. They seem like every other dwarf, so maybe. I guess I don't know too much
I haven't
about
played
Warhammer
enough
dwarves.
Warhammer to be able to say
Yeah.
what the differences
Yeah.
are, to be honest.
I mean, axes, short, heavy armor. I'd say that's correct. Beyond that, I don't know enough about Warhammer dwarves to really give a definitive answer. But yeah, maybe. I'm sure that if they're dwarfish in nature, considered to similar to D&D standards and Tolkien standards, then yeah, they're probably similar.
Yeah, cool. James has clarified, asking what are the magic items like? So similar to the question I believe Kronos asked a little bit above.
Okay, so they're all the magic items in the book so far are contraband. We had plans to include some transformation specific magic items that would interact with specific boons or floors. We didn't have room for that. That's one of my I guess lost treasures that I wanted to include in the book, but at that point the book's already way over scope. I think we've added an extra 50 something pages to the book to what it was already, even after stretch goals. That's just stuff we've put in throughout production. So
some of the love children that
that
just couldn't be left behind.
yeah, that's it. Some of the things that I couldn't let the book go without. So unfortunately that one made the chopping block, and yeah, it's something I'd love to revisit in the future, but yeah, for now it's one of the lessers of what I wanted to put in the book. So yeah, we're out there. As far as the magic items themselves, yeah, like I said before, they're all contraband. They're things that are illegal. Like we've got like a collar of animate dead as well. It's sort of thing that the world is deemed too immoral to, for people to use. And if you get caught with it, then you'll be tempted to be arrested and maybe executed. Who knows?
No
Depends on
one
where in the world you
expects
are
the
and what their
Inquisition.
law systems are. Yeah. Well, they'll come for you. They'll come for you. If you're using illegal magic items, then yeah, you can 100% expect paladins to be chasing after you.
Cool. Shikaku, advanced weapons, ranged and melee are
Yep.
awesome. Are you thinking of adding more simple or martial weapons? New martial in a similar vein to silvered weapons, or new types of armor?
Yeah, armor isn't something that we touched. I think armor is probably, if I had to point to a part of the SRD of 5th edition, so just its basic system mechanics, armor and shields are probably the part that I find the most lacking now of basic stuff. Like obviously there's little nitpicky things, but yeah, I think that's really a wasted opportunity, particularly with shields, of having different types of shields. I know that for new players, maybe that's too much. So having a variant or advanced mechanic for it would be very cool. Adding a few more types and particularly different conditions. I don't see why, you've got so many different conditions for martial weapons, or like different sort of attributes for martial weapons, or just weapons in general, yet armor has such little. So maybe that's something that we could revisit, but yeah, we'll see.
So easy. Jumping down to Canadian Lowlander, is one able to get multiple transformations?
So it depends if it makes sense, I guess. If it makes sense in your story, we haven't said specifically you can't, but I think you have to remember that transformation's a very key part of it, and the milestone system is the approval of your GM. So if your GM simply turns around and says, I don't care how many milestones you complete, I'm not letting you go a Seraph and a Lich, then no.
An Aberrant horror Seraph.
Yeah. I mean, there are some really cool character concepts, though, if you want to mash any of the two together. I could see it working, especially like a Fiend and a Seraph. You've got like this sort of fallen angel sort of concept. So I wouldn't let it at my game simply because it's going a bit far, but I could understand that, if someone else wanted to, they could probably make it work.
So pretty much falls down to the DM, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Is there any sort of criteria that you think should be abided by in determining if something works or doesn't, or is it just a purely subjective thing?
Yeah, so that's the sort of thing I've played for a while. Definitely not as long as some of the veterans out there that have been playing for longer than I've been alive. But I think I've hit the 10-year rule, so that's the sort of thing where I think I know enough to at least have an educated opinion. For the most part, I go by gut. Otherwise, I try to look at similar mechanics or similar characters at a certain level and what they're capable of. I definitely miss a few times. That's not to say it's perfect every time, but my ultimate, I guess, advice around that would be to just play test it, put it in your campaign, and just say tentatively, if this is my guess at how this should go. If it doesn't work, then we'll change it, and just be really open and communicate. I think most issues at the D&D table can be resolved, or any tabletop game can be resolved with just good communication.
I agree with that. A lot of the stories I've read about maybe like tables falling apart or arguments happening tends to stem from a lack of communication between people at the table. So being open with your GM and having them be open with you is a great way to solve those sort of things.
Yeah, exactly.
As well, maybe we could look into including that as a component of some content that we're going to put out, more based around sort of advice for maybe new DMs that don't have that, that gut feel and that ability to really sort of analyze and see where that line is. So that could be something we add to, some of that content that we're going to be developing over the next really 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
We could bring out a few short stories of Jordan being a perma DM. So.
Oh yeah, that's my life. If anyone in the greater Melbourne area wants to be a GM for a little while, then more than happy to come play in your game. I've tried, but it seems this is my curse or my transformation. And the floor is a bitch. Yeah, I guess have we got any questions in the chat yet about the sort of content people would like to see from us?
Not that I'm aware of. There could have been a message here or there that was referring to that, but nothing specifically clear cut. Would love to see this sort of content in those videos, but again, chat, if there's anything that you want to see, questions that you have that maybe we've said we have to wait till the book's released and things like that, really anything in general, how Grim Hollow relates to something else.
I mean, we've had a bunch of questions in regards to all transformations and some content, so I guess we could end up using that as content going forward and going in depth into some of these questions and really breaking them down for you guys, if that's something you'd be interested in seeing.
Yeah, I could do that. That's something that I think we could do quite effectively.
Want a 10-part video series on the Aberrant horror, Jordan?
Done. We're gonna go through every boon and floor, guys. Strap on in. I think that's gonna be more than 10
gonna
videos,
dissect
actually.
every word.
That's it. It's time. Every boon and floor. It's time. We're gonna do it. And what you can really do with each one.
We'll move on. Kronos, would being in a rage reveal your aberrant form or any other second level transformation of any other second level transformation?
So I believe it says that you can't cast or concentrate spells. So I would I personally at my table would say yes. That would be my sort of leaning towards. It also says like particularly stressful situations at the GM's discretion. So we sort of put that for mostly for RP situations. Like, for example, if you have a really, really good encounter where you just lose it at, an NPC, it's a really good moment for you to sort of reveal for just a moment what you really look like. And that adds like a really good, I guess, a really good layer to the story of what's happening in that scene or in that encounter. But it also falls under situations like this, where if the GM thinks, wait a minute, you're raging, you're going absolute gangbusters, you're I don't know, perhaps you're a barbarian vampire. I think this is a good moment for you to sort of reveal yourself.
It would make sense.
That's sort of why it's there.
It would make sense. High stress situation, you're literally raging.
It's that's what I would do. Maybe other GMs would disagree, and that's fine. Like, all power to them. But yeah, at my table, I would say that if you raged, you would go into you would reveal yourself.
Subtly, I can't say the word. Screw it. Never mind.
Subtly.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say subtly isn't really a trait of rage, I would say.
No, it's sort of kicking the door and kill anything that moves.
Yeah, so I agree
Yeah,
with
right.
fitting.
Shadow Mage 701. How do Dragonborn fit in the setting?
Cool. I don't know if we'd call this a lore spoiler, would we? What do you guys think? Is this a lore spoiler, or am I cool to talk about this?
We could give them something, right? Surely they've been patient.
Yeah, all right, okay. So the Dragonborn are actually native to a land called Castanella that is in the south. It's our sort of Hispanic sort of region that the theme of dark fantasy for this one is we're very much like talking about the themes of religion and I guess blind faith is what we sort of associate more with Castanella. And so it's a very there's a lot of positives to this part of the world. They're very passionate, they're very lively sort of people and fiercely loyal as well. But there's a few themes that we talk here, and one of them is sort of the treatment of the Dragonborn originally. And so they were almost extinct. And this is what you'll see with a lot of the non-human races, is that the humans have basically come and pushed them out of their lands, which is a little symbolic, but we'll anyway, they're very devout people, the Dragonborn, and since the death of the gods and the rise of the arch seraphs, they've taken to the decrees of the seraphs very very fanatically. And so they've actually fallen back in with the human region of Castanella, and the king of the region is a big supporter of them. And so he's restored parts of their homeland, he's given them a lot of powers, and for the most part included them in the modern world of his nation, the same as a human. In other parts of the world, they're treated with prejudice, but at least in their native home, which is attempted to be restored to them, because they are devout warriors of the Seraphs, in particular Imperius. So yeah, the Dragonborn are very heavily tied to the religion of our world.
Definite lore spoilers, but yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it's perfect.
All right, that's why I don't talk about it.
No, it's good, man. It's good.
I personally am running a Dragonborn cleric in our Grim Hollow little side campaign, so it works a treat.
Yeah, it does. It's you mace to the face.
The best part, if you can't heal it, you just mace it. It works every time.
It's good times. Good times.
Shikaku, the background playtest has 6 options. How many are you expecting to be in the finished book?
6. That's all of them. There's a few that I wanted to. We had 2 more that I wanted to, but again, they don't fit. So next time, if we do a player book, I'd actually be tempted to put it in because it's very much a player mechanic. I'd like to do a primordial, so to become an elemental, and I'd like to do some sort of like apparition, like a ghost or a specter or a shadow or something. I think that'd be really cool design-wise as well, similar to the Horizon Walker Ranger of like, you know, a lot of portals and, you know, movement, sort of like blink spell and those sort of things. I think they'd be very, very cool to sort of just like zip around the battlefield, appearing in different spots, then disappearing.
All right, Gene, will the floor for vampire at 4, will the damage from Sanguine Curse be increased?
No, it's still stake. It doesn't kill you now. We've changed sort of the parameters around it a little, and it no longer kills you outright. It paralyzes you. So it does paralyze you until the stake is, or the weapon is removed now as well. So that's made it a bit worse to compensate for paralyzing being not death outright. But there were a few people that, said that at the level that you would get this is at level 17. And if I'm not a vampire lord by 17, when am I? And that shouldn't kill a vampire lord. And I agreed.
Yeah, it definitely made sense. Something as small as that being able to kill someone who should be so as powerful as they are.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of conditions to jump through, like, and the biggest one being the enemy has to have silvered weapons. And if you look at any of the monsters, at least official monsters available at that level, there aren't many that even use weapons at that point. At the most point, you're fighting very like epic level gribbly creatures of, you know, other far realms and such, and usually they don't use silvered weapons. Some of them you could definitely have like Celestials use silvered weapons instead of the ones that they're having, or that's in their stats. But for the most part, I think that if you're fighting a lot of enemies with silvered weapons at that level, it's because the GM is trying to kill you.
You've annoyed him in some way.
Or her.
Or her.
But
or her.
yeah, you've got bigger problems than the fact that they have silvered weapons. It's more the fact that the GM is out for blood, and you should probably talk about that.
Or you're fighting vampire hunters, says Kronos.
yeah, exactly.
True,
and
yeah.
that's sort of the intention of the floor, is it allows GMs to say, all right, you're fighting vampire hunters, and then that really ties into your character arc. And that's the best thing ever, if you're a player, in my opinion, is when the GMs set aside a session or multiple sessions to say, all right, this is about you and your character, and I'm going to weave it into the greater story. And it's all to do with the fact that you're a vampire. Like, that's just icing on the cake, in my opinion.
Personally, I'm psyched with the whole advanced background subject, because I think that's going to bring a lot more of that sort of play into games at the tabletop, really, because if you have your own motivated backgrounds and now your own in-depth character motivations with perks to move forward, it could create a lot more of those sort of scenarios.
Yeah, exactly. It gives GMs character or like story hooks really for the entire party to do with individual characters or multiple of the characters trying to advance their backgrounds. And instead of saying, what do you want to do? And the players sort of saying, oh, what can we do? Which I know a lot of new players to the game do. The older players or more experienced players are generally better with that. But the less experienced players are, what can we do? This is a really good clear-cut way to say, hey, here's a goal for you to try and achieve.
Yeah, it's good. There was actually a two-part question on this, but or just asking a second question in the same comment. Gene also says, how much has the background system changed so far?
The background system has not changed much at all. We had really good feedback from it the first time we did it. Other than adding the Seafarer and the Outlander, we haven't really changed much. We've moved around some of the skills and some of the abilities you get for professions, sort of how I mentioned before. But for the most part, it's pretty similar. We've changed some of the progression requirements. We've changed a few of like the holdings that you get at different levels as well, like little bits here and there, but it's very similar. Like, you'll recognize it quite a bit.
Too easy. Shikaku again, will there be a Fey transformation or something like a Revenant? Maybe elemental, construct, or plant?
Yeah, plant's a cool one, isn't it? That's a great idea.
You kind of touched that elemental was sort of on the table.
Yeah. Elemental is something that is on the cards in the distant future. Whenever I get an opportunity to, really. Send an email to Tyler at ghostfiregaming.com and tell him that you want Jordan to do you want to do more transformations.
That way I can throw
that's
it
a good
into
way
his
to get it.
cage and let him know.
Cool.
I think
Did you-
we've touched on the elemental. As far as the others, I could see one happening for all of them. Whether we get an opportunity or not, we'll see. But yeah, it's a plan. I'd like that.
Yeah, and Shikaku seems to as well, because he said will do. He will email you, Tyler, and we appreciate the motivation for
Done.
keeping Jordan in his cage.
Done.
Good.
Done.
I'm glad we have
Make sure you tell
community
your friends too
support.
as well.
I'm glad we have the community support at keeping him in his cage.
Oh.
Alright.
So enjoy your
it's
fresh air
behind
on
the,
stream while you got it, buddy. Okay.
It's actually just a green screen behind me.
Alright, we'll move on. Gene says, also Lich and Vampire Undead trade seem a little off. Lich
Yeah,
that
we've
doesn't...
changed them up a bit. Yeah. Sorry, finish the question and maybe
A little bit defensive about his Lich.
Which what's the rest of the question? Maybe I'm jumping the gun here.
There actually isn't a question here.
I think you disappeared a bit.
I can read it off the side here, saying it
Yeah, okay,
says,
cool.
Lich and Vampire Undead trade seem off. A Lich that doesn't say it doesn't need sleep is so funny.
Yeah, good call. Good call. We picked that up too. We fixed that. You now don't need to sleep or trance. It's it's one of those things that sometimes you don't see the little things you've missed until you put it out there. But yeah, we got it thanks to you guys as well.
You guys
feedback
have
for the
helped us a lot in finding little small things like that have kind of just been, I guess, overlooked slightly, glanced over, I guess, with the other amount of work that's been going on.
Yeah, that's it. It's we're really grateful for the feedback, and the playtest sort of model or structure that we've done for this book is something we would definitely do again for future products. It's been invaluable, and I think you guys have really enjoyed sort of being a part of it as well.
Yeah, it's
Opens
been
a lot
fun.
of transparency as well. You can sort of see where the funds we got for our Kickstarter are going. You know, there's no sort of tentatively sitting on your hands like, oh, are we getting a product? Are we not? You can see we're working hard towards getting a final deliverable.
Getting it done.
All those video updates will set the benchmark for future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be a great way to go about it going forward, because I'm excited. You get to see more of this face popping up all over your screens.
That's it.
Okay,
That's
we'll
it.
move on to the next question. Shikaku asks, in Celtic mythology, Fae can be killed by iron or cold iron. Will you be adding anything like this in the book?
Yeah, that's a big part of Fae. Fae are an interesting one because there's a lot of mind the French, but there's a lot of bastardization of them from their original mythology. Sometimes they get it correct. But yeah, iron is one that's typically, depending on the source, it's either omitted or it's definitely brought to the foresight. It's something that we would have to decide whether we're going to continue the trend of bastardizing their culture or not. I guess that's I'd like to do the iron part of it, or cold iron in that case, to make it a bit more I guess unique from just random nails and such. But for the most part, I think that if there was a Fae, they would have some sort of downside like that. The other as well is sort of the idea of, like, if I was to make a Fae transformation, it would be very much rooted in the idea of meddling with people's I guess future, or meddling with their fate and the weave and that sort of that just general I guess theme or trope, you know, sort of like the Rumpelstiltskin sort of.
So I suppose the only problem with Fae, because I'd love to see Fae too, they're a super interesting concept, but I feel it would be a bit of like a practice in separating a lot of the traits they could use, I suppose, with what fiends almost have, I guess. Like referencing, like the reference to Rumpelstiltskin being a kind of contract-based sort of deals is almost kind of what the fiend covers anyway, in a sense. I know they're not the same, but
yeah, it'd have to be taken with a lot of finesse to not step on the toes of the fiend. And the fiend is, in my opinion, more iconic than a fae within the setting or just fantasy settings. I mean, they're both huge, so it's kind of a hard call or big claim to make, but I'd be more upset about not including a fiend than not including a fae.
Oh, for sure. I love the fiend.
So, yeah. And I guess, it would have to be something to do with how you can circumnavigate the whole use of contracts, unless we leaned into that and said they both use contracts.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Just as long as Jean can turn into Peter Pan, then we're good here.
Okay, done. We'll, there would have to be some sort of live forever sort of boon in there, like stay young forever and fly around. Maybe some pixie dust.
Kronos, is that Mariner and Outlander background going to be in the final book?
Background. Yeah, absolutely. They're they've been put in. They were just omitted for one-time reasons. We weren't super confident with what we'd done with them for the time that we had to get that playtest out. And two, we didn't feel like it was super necessary to have all the backgrounds within the final playtest to make sure that, it could be playtested effectively.
Mm.
But yeah, they're all going to be in the final book. It's there's nothing left out there.
The Seafarer.
I mean, we could do more in the future, but
the Seafarer is going to be exciting.
Yeah. It's you've got your sailor and you've got your sailor and you've got like your dock worker, sort of like harbor master sort of path. But the third one's my favorite. It starts really like, I guess, dredgy, which is the sea gatherer. You sort of like just scavenge like docks and stuff. Well, you're basically a pauper, but it ends up like sort of, you sort of go through this like progression path of becoming like a nautical legend of like hunting krakens, and sort of I just got like this image of just this guy leaping off of like a sort of like a coastal cliff into like the face of like some Cthulhu gribbly ocean monster with a harpoon, just like long
drawn
hair.
Big over the head, just coming.
Yeah. Just like rips his shirt off. It's a great sort of like the sort of thing that
Nordic erotica. I mean Nordic mythology. Nordic mythology.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, that was close.
Shadow Mage asks, are there any prominent cults in Itharis? If so, what are they?
Yeah, there's a few. So they're not going to make any sense unless I talk about the lore, but
I could see you weighing up whether or not you should.
He wants to, mate. You can see it. You can see he wants to. It's on the tip of his tongue.
Alright, so I guess one of them is the Cult of the Great Worm, which is, I think that I don't have to talk about the lore too much for you to sort of get an idea of what that's all about. So their purpose is to bring about the return of the Great Worm and see the end of the world. We'll leave it at that.
Is there any others?
Any pronouns there? So.
Nice. Is there any others that you want to sort of tease or talk about?
Yes, but I won't. We'll talk about it in this spoiler chat.
Kronos is just added to that. Is it Great Worm or Great Worm with a W-Y-R-M?
It's actually W-U.
Ooh.
W-U-R-M.
Curveball.
Yeah. So, big old worm.
Big old worm.
We'll move on. Erwin Elf. With the lycanthrope feat, can there be a Fey form?
A Fey form for the lycanthrope? That's interesting. I guess they kind of cross a bit in I guess settings for the most part, like particularly the Feywild from Wizards of the Coast. There's a lot of sort of, I guess, werewolf in particular themes set there. I'd prefer to do the Fae as their own thing one day if that's an opportunity I get, but there's no reason you couldn't make your own. You could very easily just change them from a shapeshifter to a Fae.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, if you wanted something more in detail than that, or like more fleshed out, I guess you'll have to email Tyler at ghostfiregaming.com and tell him to let Jordan make a Fae transformation.
I'm just gonna get slammed with emails now. I can see it already.
And just it's one new email per question as well, not just
per
all
line,
in the one.
not even per the whole question, per line.
Just yeah.
Shikaku is very keen on this as well. Capitals yes with exclamation points. So again, you're gonna get that email, Tyler.
That's it. The more you put pressure on him, the more he'll give me out of cage privileges to do research on this.
That's still in the cage.
I can slide books through a cage. You can do research in a cage. Don't even try it.
Damn it.
Kronos asks, how do the Seraph, Fiendin, Aberrant horror transformations affect your lifespan?
Your lifespan. That's a good one. We haven't mentioned anything around that regards. It's kind of interesting because I wouldn't see them affecting your lifespan to the point that they would shape the outcome of a campaign unless your campaign is real long or has really big time gaps. Maybe if you're doing like some sort of wrapping up with like a final sort of scene about how everyone ends at the end of the campaign, maybe it would then. But for the most part, I haven't had a campaign. I played for, again, a long time, not nearly as long as I'm sure as some of you, but I've never had a campaign that's spanned for more than the lifespan of of anyone who lives longer than a human, I guess. Usually because we have humans in the game, and I try to make sure that their characters don't die of old age. It's pretty anticlimactic.
You make it all the way through this epic adventure and two of you die off because you've just reached the ripe old age of 72.
That's it. You just retire and get old and house a little cottage on the hills and die in your sleep in your bed.
You become farmer NPC number 275.
That's it. Is the guy who is always like grumbling about something when you come into the marketplace, putting up a
damn adventurers, get off my lawn.
Help, need adventurers. Something down the well, don't know what it is. Keeps whispering at me. No, we haven't written anything that specifically. The only ones that we have is the undead. I think that again, that's something that would depend on your setting. I mean, feel free absolutely to sort of shape that to what you require at your table.
We're also very curious to see some of the stuff you guys end up like homebrewing and kind of meshing into it as well. It's pretty exciting. I'm curious.
I mean, my gut would say that a Seraph would live longer than someone of that race typically would. Same for probably a Fiend. An Aberrant horror would probably live less, would be my opinion. But I could also see valid arguments for them living longer as well. I mean, really any sort of transformation that changes your physical form, I think has a good chance to impact how long you would live as an individual.
Honest has added a workaround, just get a friendly wizard to use the clone spell on them. That way they won't kill them. Old age won't kill them. Yeah,
done. If you get to that level. You'd like to think that in the long lifespan of your favorite character or player character, you're going to get to play for long enough to get to that level, and that they don't die at the ripe old age of 35 to something non-combat related.
A plague.
That's it. That's pretty feel bad way to go. I mean, if you're going to die in a campaign, you want it to be a good death, I think.
A hero's death. Warrior's death.
Yeah, that's it. Not just, oh, you got sick. Roll a con saving throw.
You forgot to get some wipes for that cut you got on the trailer a few,
Yeah.
a few sessions back.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You can either become a horror or you can make some con saving throws, and we'll see how you go.
We'll move on.
Yeah, yeah.
Shikaku asks, will you be making NPCs based on some of the people or their player characters who backed the book?
Yeah. We've got about 14 of them, I believe. So
Yep,
there's a
14.
few there. They're in the book. They've got some lore around them and sort of how a few of them have managed to meet up and interact with a few others, and some like each other, some aren't friends, and it's cool. They like add a sort of plan is to use them as familiar faces for future content as well, sort of have them as reoccurring figures. So that'll be sort of setting the ground of who these people are and what their goals are, and then sort of having them resurface at time to time so people can sort of say, oh, I know who that is. I know what their sort of characteristics are likely to be at a glance. And, that should tell a fair bit about the scene or the encounter that they're in and what that means for their character.
And we've got the art to go along with that as well, and showing
Yeah,
them all
we've
together.
Yeah, that's it. We've got some pretty good quality art in there. Pretty happy with how that all turned out.
Cool. All right, Gene, will there be feats for transformation specifically?
Maybe. We don't have any in this book. I find that the transformation system itself is pretty encompassing with different sort of like options that you can take that don't really have an opportunity cost as far as character progression. For example, taking a few levels as a vampire, other than adding flaws, it doesn't take anything from your character's progression. You can still get 20 levels in any class. You can still multi-class. You can, it's very free and open in that regard. So I don't really see the need for feats. I'd be more inclined to just add more boons in an expanded list.
Oh yeah. Well, the role-playing milestones is a big factor of that. Most people wanted to still be able to max character level, so.
Yeah, that's it. People wanted to, and it makes sense as well. If you're transforming into a vampire, you should be able to be a mage-esque vampire, so a wizard, or you should be able to go, a warrior sort of vampire. Or there's so many, because these more represent a race than a class. If you're looking purely at the concept, not necessarily the mechanics, I think that it's prudent to not take away class levels.
That's fair enough. Kronos asks, is there any sort of wild hunt equivalent in Etharis?
Yes, I'm a big fan of The Witcher, or just the continent as a world or a setting. I don't think so. I'm trying to think if there's anything that is wild huntish. I think that's one of the sort of like tropes or inspirations that we actually didn't touch upon. It would be a very good adventure module, but we don't have anything so specific that I would say relates to the wild hunt. Maybe I'm missing something, and when you guys go through the book, you'll be like, oh yeah, what about this? But off the top of my head, I can't think of any.
Alright, Shadow Mage, are there any prominent drugs in the Underworld?
Yes, we have a few.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I can talk about them on Twitch. We have a few. They're all made up, so I suppose we can. So there's Dreams Leave, which is so by the way, these are all in the contraband section. So these are things that in civilized parts of the world, depending on the local laws, you'll be some sort of punishment for possession of these. So there's Dreams Leave, which is for the most part, it doesn't really give you, it gives you kind of like a luck benefit when you take it, but the side effects of it are really bad. The only reason you would want to take it, in my opinion, is if you were very desperate for the boon that it provides. The boon's pretty small compared to the negative of it. We've got two others. I'll let you guys read them as well. They're pretty similar in the sense that they do provide a smallish boon when you take them, and a much larger consequence of taking them down the road. They're also addictive. We have mechanics for getting addicted to these and withdrawals. For the most part, I would not advise you do drugs in our game.
Now we're Twitch
Kronos just
friendly.
wants to
They're
make-
happy with that answer now, so it's okay.
Well, the stream's still up, so we're good for now, at least.
That's it.
Kronos has added to this and saying that he just wants to run a game of a party of crew, where the crew, are smugglers.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
so these
that would be
things
really
are,
cool.
So the contraband, particularly talking about like the illicit substances in the world, are more designed around plot hooks and I guess like MacGuffins almost. Like obviously there's rules for if you take it, because there's always going to be someone who thinks, oh, what if I take it? But that's more to assist the GM so they don't have to come up with something on the spot. The only characters that I would expect to take it, fully aware of what the effects are NPCs, when you want to create a character that, you know, has a pretty horrific addiction to something, because sometimes that's an important, you know, trait to give an NPC to show, you know, character to them, or characteristics that, you know, they can even progress above. There are benefits to some of them, and some of them are not as bad as others. There's a few that I could see that you could think, oh yeah, you might be able to game in a way as well that you get around the withdrawals, not too bad. But Dreams Leave in particular, it's bad. It's really bad, and it's meant to represent sort of like this sweeping, I guess, epidemic of a crisis amongst at least the lower class of the world.
It'd be something you could probably definitely find in, like, say, the slums or
Yeah.
like encampments outside of cities, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's that quick and easy release from a really harsh and punishing world for the lower class that really has them sort of like entrapped in this awful substance.
I'll move off that. I think that's plenty. Kronos added to his question from above about the Wild Hunt, but meaning more on the folklore of Wild Hunt.
The folklore. Okay. Yeah, I still don't think so. I think same answer. When the PDF comes out, have a read and let me know what you think, though. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting something. There's so much lore that it's hard to remember. You know, every little detail. I'm sure there's something that comes close. Maybe in Shana, there's sort of like a more fairy tale-esque region that I'd say is like more aligned with like dark fairy tales, Brothers Grimm. It might be something in there that you find a bit of similarities to, but for the most part, I don't think so.
You'll definitely find in different parts of the world we have definitely drawn from different grim, dark kind of subgenres in a way.
Or dark fantasy in particular, subgenres.
Yeah, dark fantasy in particular. With, like, say, we've got gothic, we've got grim dark, we've got like Brothers Grimm-esque, and it kind of changes depending on what location in the world you're in.
Yeah. So, like Tyler said, they all draw from different subgenres of dark fantasy, and I think that it gives people a chance if they're, you know, like Grimdark is one of my favorites, but it's really punishing and it can get repetitive if there's no sort of like breaks or conflicts that resolve. You need wins to come with the, you know, the harsh grind that comes along with it. Otherwise, there's no point in playing that sort of game, in my opinion.
Yeah, all conflict,
like,
no resolution does not make for an amazing game.
No. So, in my opinion, like just having the different regions represent, apart from like, you know, it's kind of cool to have themes for each region, is it allows you to sort of say, oh, we're gonna, you know, do a few sessions here, you know, finish a story arc. All right, we're gonna go over here, and it shakes up the game while still grounding it in like a dark fantasy world.
Shikaku has asked a question here, and it has been answered by Kronos, but I'll still ask it because there may be other ways around this. So Shikaku says, asking for a friend, how would one go about getting an NPC in the book? And Kronos says it happened during the Kickstarter, which is 100% correct. We had our Master of Worlds and Shaper of Worlds pledges who had the ability to work with us in creating some NPCs that are now in the book. But the question for you guys, is there an opportunity for someone to still get an NPC in the world? I know not for this book, but
For this book,
that's
it
something we would have
definitely
to.
not. But
Yeah. So for this world, or for this book, sorry, no, like no chance. We're 2-3 weeks out of like printing the book, so it's not going to happen. For the world itself, potentially. I mean, I don't want to say never. It's kind of something we really wanted to be special for those people who backed us at the start and believed in us before. I honestly think a lot of people are going to see this book when they get it, and they're going to be blown away with the level of production that it's gone into it. It's not. I've kickstarted some things in the past, and you get very varying degrees of quality back. Some of them have been really good. Some of them have been really poor. I think this definitely aligns with the higher end. I don't want to, sound, too full of ourselves, but I think we've done a really excellent job in delivering a quality product. Obviously, that all comes down to individual preferences, but I think that when people see this, it's going to be a lot more confidence inspiring for future books. However, there are a few people who sort of believed in us from the beginning, and they believed in us with quite a bit of money. Like, it wasn't a cheap pledge level, and so we really want to make sure that these people get remembered as we do future content as well. Like, what's in the book now for their characters is sort of like a dossier or like a background of them. It tells you about them, and we sort of want to continue carrying them through as we sort of expand upon the world and do more content.
For such a big investment early on for us, we wanted to do something big in return by sort of immortalizing a character they have, or a character idea they had forever within the book. As a way of thanks.
Yeah, that's it's really important to us that we sort of celebrate those people who believed in us when we hadn't proven ourselves yet.
Yeah, definitely, that's a good answer. And I guess the part about high level of production quality here as well is that, like, we have absolutely no ability to give that same level of quality and detail and attention into something in this current book. There's absolutely no way that would be able to happen. So hopefully that answers your question, Shikaku. Moving on, I think Kronos is next with asking if there's any sort of end of world plot or prophecies that hint at ways the world might end. There's quite a few. There's the Weeping Pox, which is in the trailer. It sort of is this plague that's sweeping across the land. It's arrived for the most part semi-recently, but it's hit the world in a very big way. So we have a few diseases in the book.
That is making our book sound a lot more contemporary with the recent global times.
That's it. We had this. We have evidence that we've had this for a lot longer than coronavirus has been around. We're not touching on sensitive subjects. But for the most part, there's the Weeping Pox. There's a few cults that are trying to bring about sort of doomsday. The Cult of the Great Worm is one of them. There's obviously the Mists. There's a few. There's obviously like the vampire aristocracy of the Estoian Empire, which is sort of like a gothic horror region as well. Their current leader, Drago Koshevek, or Archduke Drago Koshevek, basically he won't be content until he's ruled the world and enslaved them all as like undead servants. So I would call that pretty post-apocalyptic as well, or apocalyptic. At least for player characters that aren't undead.
Really great. Do you want to move on, or you just?
We'll move on. We'll
move on from it. Yeah.
Too easy. Would immunity to disease or poison give you some way of resisting addiction? Are there any combat drugs?
Yes, there are combat drugs. There's one that's specifically about enhances a strength-based martial fighter, and one that assists spellcasters, sort of lore-wise, it's supposed to like enhance their mental capacity for a short period of time at the expense of long-term side effects. So as far as being immune to disease, no, it's not something that we really wanted to. We didn't really see that as an appropriate connection.
I suppose also if you're immune to disease, then the negative effects of some of those contraband substances would kind of get nulled, meaning it would be against your best interest to then not use them, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I sort of see them as two different things as well. Being immune to disease doesn't make you immune to sort of withdrawal symptoms and such. It's being immune to disease makes you immune to the weeping pox. That's pretty cool. You can sort of wade through, like leper encampments and, sort of like refugee camps of people infected with the pox, and you're sort of immune to getting affected, which sort of may help if you need to, talk to an NPC that's within that camp that has the disease, or retrieve something, or because the weeping pox is really nasty. You don't want to get it.
Definitely don't want to catch it.
No. If you're aware of how to catch it, like you just read the book and sort of see how you can get it. It's a bit metagamey, I guess, to do that, but I mean, people in the world would be aware of precautions to take to not catch the disease. So I would let that slide at my table. You can make sure that you don't get the disease that way, though, at least, like just keeping contact from people.
Is that it? But if you were somehow immune to poison, would that weaken the drugs then? Because 5th edition basically handles alcohol as a poison mechanically. Yeah,
it does. That's a good point. I think that's another thing, that if we sort of like wrote every factor that came into this, it would be 2 pages long to do with drugs and handling them. So it's one of those things I think just the GM can sort of take into their own regards, I guess.
Yeah, sort of play it by table.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you'd be immune to the effects of it and the withdrawals as well. So maybe if you take it, you just don't benefit or have any flaws from it. But yeah, that's the thing. I'm very mindful, if you can't tell, not to step on other GMs and the way they like to play the game. I think that what works for each table is different, and that's a good thing.
Completely. That's how you get new ideas, and you get a constantly evolving context as well.
Yeah. I guess like the meta, or not even the meta, just the environment of the game itself evolves.
Constantly changing, constantly adapting. It makes it interesting.
Yeah. Definitely changed a lot since when I first started. Streaming's done a lot to the game, you can see.
For sure.
All right, Shikaku asks, so this book looks to have a lot of DM tools and some for PCs. Are there going to be monster stats, vehicles, or stats for forts and castles?
Vehicles, no. Forts and castles, no. Monsters, yes. We've got, for each of the curses, if you've read the curse playtest, you can see that there's a section, or each of them, the culmination is basically the curse target becomes some sort of like beast that's very, I guess more like fairy tale inspired, of like Beauty and the Beast and such, but they're a lot darker than that. There's some pretty grotesque monsters that you can become due to these curses, and so we have stats for each of them.
Yeah, for sure. As well, would you say the transformations and the backgrounds is sort of PC orientated, or?
Yeah. So they're all PC orientated. I mean, as far as they're definitely very PC orientated. There's a lot of DM content at the back of the book. The whole front of the book is player content. Obviously, the DM needs to read it to be on top of it and to know what's happening. But the first probably 150 pages relate to characters or player characters.
Yeah, for sure. So insert Thanos meme.
Yeah, that's it. Balance.
He has added onto that as well, or new races or reworking old ones to that.
Lore-wise, we talk about the different races and how they fit into our world. We haven't changed any of their mechanics or reworked the way that they work within the game. Sorry, we didn't feel they needed to. I feel like that would have been just making change for change's sake. They fit into the world great. There's one or two that don't belong in our world, and so we don't talk about them. Tieflings are one. We don't they don't exist in our world, but that doesn't mean that you can't put them in if you want to play with them.
Just have to homebrew it a little bit.
Yeah, that's it. Which, I think most GMs homebrew things to at least a little bit of an extent, whether it's just adding something that they don't use, or adding, Unearthed Arcana and tinkering with it a bit to make it fit, like, their balance requirements. And
it would definitely
even
be
if
cool.
it's just creating a magic item.
Would definitely be cool to see a lot of Grim Hollow-esque specific mechanics getting ported across to other things like Arcana and things, and seeing tabletop sessions go with a mix of both would be quite entertaining.
Yeah. Well, we've actually opened up most of our content. Obviously, things like product identity, we can't. We haven't opened up because that's our intellectual property.
Yeah.
But as far as like the mechanics of backgrounds of the advanced weapons transformations, that's all open content once this book gets released. So you guys can create whatever you want around it. You can expand upon it, you can change it, you can build more transformations if you want to, you can pull them apart. It's really up to you guys. That's the sort of thing that we want to help sort of advance the the game community and that meta that I was talking about, and that's, I guess, our contribution. Best way to do that is to open the content.
Completely. Erwin Elf asks the next question. Don't know if you guys have answered this. I believe we haven't yet. But is there going to be any kind of hatred or untrust of certain races?
Magical races.
Yeah, well, they all dislike humans to certain degrees. Humans have a pretty dubious past of being a younger race that expands and grows very quickly, that's obsessed with growth, I guess, like our world. The jobs and growth is sort of the motto of every Western first world country. And sort of the same in this world is, humans have just expanded and conquered everything that they could find. And older, more ancient races that sort of found that balance within the world, didn't really know how to combat this when, in the lifespan of an elf, you have probably, 50 human generations. And so in the lifespan of one elf, one small settlement becomes a giant metropolis surrounded by multiple towns, which is surrounded by multiple villages, and they didn't really know how to fight these people. And so they're very resentful of lost land, of lost conflicts. And there's a few bridges that are being mended, like I mentioned, with the Castanellans and the Dragonborn. There's a lot that aren't. The dwarves are also, with the region of the Burok, they've learned to live together in sort of a symbiotic relationship out of necessity. But yeah, there's definitely humans that don't like each other as well. Like, you've got the Valakans of the north that dislike pretty much every other human empire as well. So it's a bit more complicated than just races not liking each other, I guess. It's also regional.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Move on to Kronos' question. Is there any sort of focus on things that come from the underground, like some sort of underground empire?
Yeah, we have an underground metropolis, which is an old ancient civilization. It's not to the extent of the Underdark by any means. It's not this expansive sort of region that covers the entire of the Underworld, but it does cover a good portion of one of the provinces. And underneath there is sort of like the origins of a lot of dark magics and effects within the world, sort of where they've come from and how they were introduced into our setting. It's a very necropolis sort of styled, ancient sort of, I think you can picture what it is. It's you'll be happy, I think, with it.
Right, well, will there be any non-contraband magical items? Something that might be in the possession of clerics or seraphs?
No, we've that's one of the sections that we wanted to add in that we just didn't really have enough room for it. as I mentioned, we've already gone over scope by quite a bit, and the line had to be drawn somewhere, and magic items was the point where it was sort of taken out. We have a few contraband ones, like I said, but I did want to add transformational ones specific. Magic items, I think, like having a specific magic or like magic item phylactery that gives you additional sort of like lich boons or interacts with you in a special way if you're a lich. Maybe has a very small slide effect if you're not a lich. That's the sort of thing I wanted to add, but I think that's for a future project.
I mean, especially in a world where magic isn't necessarily smiled upon, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to have some non-contraband magic items, I suppose.
It's I guess lore-wise, another spoiler we can sort of talk about is depending on where you are in the world, you'll be greeted like spellcasters are greeted by either high praise to mild suspicion all the way to inquisitors that will burn them. Like it's something that needs to be discussed very early in session 0 if you're going to follow the setting to the T as we've written it. Is that being a spellcaster is you have to take into account RP, I guess RP hurdles that you normally wouldn't otherwise.
You've decided to choose hard mode on your difficulty setting on starting the game.
Yeah, and that kind of that in a way sort of balances the fact that after 3rd level, maybe 5th level, most spellcasters just blow martial classes out of the water with power level, and they just continue to. They grow exponentially, and martial classes can't hold a bar to them by the time you get to higher levels.
Help balance it out a little bit.
Fair enough. Shikaku asks, looking into the future, what books are you wanting to add to the Grim Hollow world? Something in the vein of a monster manual and making your own classes or subclasses?
I think subclasses is the one that I've been hankering out for, as sort of like a personal dream of mine, something I can tick off the bucket list if I've got that out there. As far as things that I think the setting needs, I think it does need a monster manual as well, sort of to bring a lot of like the really dark, gribbly monsters in the universe or in our world sort of to life, and really show people why our setting is a bit different to some of the other dark fantasy settings, particularly some of the D&D ones, which is very I guess they are what they are. I mean, everyone who's played them, I'll try not to step on toes, that they're very I think they're a bit played out, basically. I think we shake it up a bit, mostly around the monster section, as if we're just talking about monsters, that is. We add layers of conflict to them. We try to make it not just beasts that you're fighting.
We kind of want to break the mold in a way. We don't want it to just be like another like a cookie cutter standard dark fantasy.
Well, they're not just stat blocks either. Like the creature you're fighting is there for a reason. And I know that's easy to do with sort of the text in the monster manual. If you sort of read it and you say, oh, okay, a vampire is this, but in ours you can sort of see that this vampire is a human, for example. You can add a template to them. They're they were a human, and you can really follow where they've come from, as most monsters don't originate as just mythical beasts. They're usually targets of curses, or they're targets of they're a result of dark magic that you can sort of say, oh, I don't really know where a manticore came from. It's more, for example, a verminous abomination. That it's come from a curse. You can see the curse. If you're the right class, you can actually cast the curse and turn someone into it. We really want each of our monsters to tell more of a story.
All right, we've got to the end of the questions twice now. Cronus just asked another question, which is great, but we're getting to the end of things as well. I believe we're approaching the 2-hour mark, about an hour and 40 on this.
Yeah, I think it's
So we might say we've got 2 questions in chat at the moment. Shigaku is a very sort of brief general one there, which is we'll have a quick answer to. So we might go 2 additional questions after the one Kronos has just asked. So make them good, guys, and then we'll start wrapping things up, I think.
That's
and
it.
Then we'll give a bit of an overview of what's to come next few weeks, I guess. We'll touch on that again, and then we'll close up the stream from
That's
there.
it.
So Shikaku's question was, this is a low magic setting, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a low. It's low magic compared to, say, Forgotten Realms. That doesn't mean it's a low magic setting compared to, say, Game of Thrones. It's definitely higher magic than Game of Thrones. But it's, compared to Forgotten Realms, it'll feel like a low magic setting.
It's fair
It's
enough.
particularly surrounding divine magic.
Just reading this question from Kronos. It's cool. Does it vary depending on how your spellcaster looks outwardly? I would assume a divine soul with its angel wings would not be received the same as a more creepy, sinister-looking shadow sorcerer or great old one warlock.
Yeah, that's the great debate, in my opinion, from even high fantasy settings when you're fighting adversaries that have, some sort of intelligence and can recognize spellcasters. If you're walking around looking like every other spellcaster in the world with, iconic wizard robes and wizard hat, which
The
I
term
admit
one
is half the
hand,
point of
big
playing
big
a-
magical
yeah.
staff standing in the other.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it makes sense that the bandits think, oh, I've seen mages before, I know what they're capable of. I think, the assassin amongst our groups is probably going to try and ambush him, take him out in one hit. That makes sense, rather than hitting the guy, who's covered in steel, full plate. That's that's how I play my games, and so that's something that I would, do the same with I do the same with spellcasters. I make it that in my world they can apply for permits in certain parts of the world, which are licenses to cast magic. You have to be a part of certain organizations, similar to getting like a medical license in our world, and you're regulated. There's certain spells you can cast, certain spells you can't cast. There's spells that, certain contexts you're allowed to cast spells. You can look however you want then, providing you have the license and you're within the regulations.
And within the right area of the world as well.
Yeah, true. True. If you want to cast magic illegally, according to these organizations, then you just do it discreetly. A good way to do that is to not dress like a wizard. You can your spellcasting focus can be a wand, which is easy to hide. You can, dress like a nobleman, dress like
Have you
dress
skipped up
like
your spellcasting?
yeah, that's it. Dress like someone who, just looks like a merchant, for example. You don't need to dress like a wizard. But then I get that there's some people that's like half the point of being a wizard, is to dress like a wizard. So really, it's up to you. It's up to you. There are parts of the world as well, though, where spellcasters are actively hunted and exterminated. In those parts of the world, it's much more dubious. So I would wear, cloaks.
You'd want to tread a lot more carefully through those sections of the world.
Yeah. So it's really more about creating an environment and sort of effectively communicating from the beginning at session 0. This is what the world is like. If you want to make a spellcaster in this world, these are the sort of hurdles you'll have to jump over. And then you can go about that however you want. If you get burnt at the stake in session 3, that's probably because you're trying to charm shopkeepers. It's so that's basically how the world works. I mean, at least our setting when I play it. The book doesn't say that that's how you have to play the game. It sort of says that's what the world is like, and you can change it pretty easily.
I suppose.
I guess you just do what works for your game.
Also depends on how forgiving your DM is. If he'll give you like a little 3-strike system, or if he's just gonna go outright.
That's it.
As soon as there's a slip up.
Yeah, and I think that's also part of the beauty of running a dark fantasy game, where you don't build the characters or the player characters up as these almighty heroes and protagonists that can wipe out entire villages. You've got CR 10 guards, that sort of thing, where they can take out most threats by themselves. They're not sending you out to go kill goblin encampments because they can kill the goblins themselves. And so as a result, You can't walk up to shopkeepers and charm them and say, you're going to give me all your gold, because they're not going to do that. Like, they're not going to stand for that. Sorry. Like, they have defenses against this. You're not the first spellcaster to exist in this world.
You won't be the
People have
first
tried
one to
that
try
before.
it, and you won't be the
Yeah.
last one to try it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they figured out ways to deal with this a while ago. So, and yeah, I'm excited for you guys to sort of see that in the world.
All right, we have our two last questions. First one is from Erwin Elf.
Yep.
Would druids be considered holy like clerics, or would they be seen more like witch doctors in Etharis?
So we have druids up in the northern regions that are actually just druids. They draw their magic from nature. We consider them more like primordial magic. Then we have druids sort of down. We have a few more druids down south that are called shamans. They're basically druids. Stat-wise, they're druids. We just call them shamans. They're more religious, I guess you would say. But again, they still draw their magic from these, spirits of nature. So almost like fae-like entities that grant powers to them. So they go about it in a religious way, but it's still drawing their magic from nature.
So, in regards to more of like a public perception of them, how would they be sort of considered?
I guess it depends on what you look like. If you look like a hermit, they're probably not going to regard you as a spellcaster at all.
They still might stay
If
away
you're-
from you, but they won't regard you
Yeah.
as a spellcaster.
That's it. As far as you're regarded, though, I think that they would look at you. Yeah, if you're healing people with herbs and ointments and such, they're going to look at you more as like a physician, and you'd probably be looked upon a bit higher in society. I'd say, particularly if you were easing people's sort of ailments and such. But again, like that's our setting. Like, you don't have to play it that way. If you want to say that these people, like, you're carrying a big gnarled root staff with a glowing rock in the end, there's paladins coming for you, then you can do that too. That works.
Bring it on. Shikaku has got the last question here. Asks, clerics and paladins sound like they would be welcomed by more people, and arcane casters be burned in the streets. But how would druids and rangers be treated in other nature casters? So a very similar question, actually.
Yeah, that's fair. So druids, I guess we'll start with arcane casters are mistrusted largely because of that exact reason of they have this unfathomable power that for the most part the common person can't understand. They don't know where it comes from. They don't know how mages come about. It's not to say there's regions where spellcasters are perfectly accepted and actually almost worshipped. They represent the higher echelons of society. But the average, low-level spellcaster who never makes it beyond, say, level 2 is usually frightened of, because in a dark fantasy world, they typically use this power in mistrustful ways, even if it's not for, to harm other people. It's just for personal gain, and you sort of get that jealousy. Clerics and paladins are revered mostly because when the gods died, the Seraphs are the only conduits of divine power left. And so they're very rare. And the only people that are championed by Seraphs are those that represent like the paragons of the virtue that the Seraph represents. So generally, like the Seraph of Mercy will only empower their avatar, who they think represents, mercy as, all-encompassing. So generally, it's more to do with the character of these people as well. Every time a cleric shows up, most people will go their entire life without seeing one, but when they do, generally greatness follows, and that's just the setting. And so if you want to create a cleric or a paladin in this world, you represent that sort of person. And so as you're going from village to village, maybe you have to hide who you are, not because of the common people, but because of enemies of that religion.
So it's hard for the
It's
common
sort of-
people to be angry at a spellcaster who is using their spells to heal all their sick.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a case by case. As for the druids and the rangers, I'd put them somewhere in the middle. If you're a druid, and yeah, like Tyler said, if you're healing the healing the weak and the sick and the the injured, it's going to be hard for them to be mad at you. Maybe you need to prove yourself first. But yeah, like a big theme of dark fantasy is sort of like suspicion and mistrust of not just arcane casters, but of all, strangers, things that are unknown to them. It's sort of like that ignorance of knowledge. So yeah, I guess it depends on how you play your character. I hope that helps. It probably doesn't.
It's something you guys, I guess, will be able to tinker out and play around with and get to be more familiar with as you run campaigns through it, which will probably give a better answer.
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer.
It is.
Yeah.
Shikaku's jumped in and said it does, so I think you've answered it well.
Great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good to know. So yeah, I guess that's it for questions, guys. Thank you, everyone. And maybe Jordan and Tyler, if you guys want to do a quick sort of maybe summary and then sort of final thoughts and what's to happen moving forward, and then we'll close it down.
All right. Well, summary from what we're thinking of going forward, I assume, is we're going to try and start, well, obviously a big stream of us playing is a big one that we need to get to at some point. We're kind of working on an area in which we can set ourselves up so we can stream a game of Grim Hollow for you guys, involving our team and maybe a couple of our friends as well. We're going to start working a lot more towards our socials, and once this book's finished, you're going to be able to see a lot more of Jordan too. He'll finally be let out of his cage and he'll be able to socialize with you guys as well.
It's news to me. I'm so excited.
I didn't want to tell him too early because I didn't want to get him too excited, but
it's Christmas.
It's basically your Christmas. We'll make this Christmas. It'll be fun.
Yeah, that's it.
Aside from that, we will start being a lot more active moving forward in like Discord and on our socials. We're going to start bringing out things on video, like YouTube videos that basically go a lot more in depth into specific mechanics and aspects of the book ourselves, and I guess updates and videos on once we decide what we're going to do going forward, what you guys can start to expect to see coming out from us. On the spot, that's kind of all I have off the top of my head, unless you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I know there's a lot of work that goes into streaming something like a campaign, and particularly because I think a few of our friends who are interested are also, they're on one hand they're interested in it, on the other hand they're a bit shy.
Yeah, a bit camera shy.
We'll have to do a few like sort of ease into those waters, maybe play a few other games first to make sure that not just that they're comfortable, which I'm sure the moment that they jump on stream and all you guys give your kind praises, they'll be more
Put
than
them at ease a bit.
More than at ease. But also just allowing us to sort of figure out the technical sides of things, because obviously with this stream, with the last stream in particular as well, there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than what you would think that would normally
a lot more
happen,
than we realized too, since none of us had ever really streamed, so this was all kind of new territory for us to go through.
Yeah, so really just as often as we can get in front of camera and do some sort of content, even if it's not D&D or Grim Hollow related, just, playing, I don't know, we all play Magic the Gathering. We've been playing for a while, so that's the sort of thing that we do sometimes. Maybe we'll do an odd stream of that from here and there, or just playing a board game or something, just to help us really like iron out the kinks of, audio, of cameras, and make sure that our internet can handle it. So
that would also be a huge help. Yeah.
That's really the roadmap moving forward. But really excited to get in front of camera and see you guys a lot more, and really talk about what we've created, and hopefully be a bit more engaging.
Yeah, we'll get you guys a lot more involved in a lot of things that we do, so that'll be exciting.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it.
Yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for me.
So thank you everyone for the questions, and we'll keep you updated. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for
See you
tuning
guys.
in.
Bye.
Bye.